Have you ever noticed how one person's words can ruin your whole day? A careless comment, a rude tone, or even silence, and suddenly you're carrying their energy like it belongs to you. But here's the truth. Nobody deserves that kind of power over your peace. Imagine living in a way where no matter what someone says or does, it doesn't stick to you. It just passes through. That's what today is about, how to never feel angry or bothered by anyone again. When something catches you off guard, whether it's a rude comment, a frustrating email, or a disrespectful gesture, the natural instinct is to react right away. We want to defend ourselves, prove a point, or release the tension boiling inside. But here's the problem. Your very first reaction usually belongs to the other person, not you. It's triggered by their actions, their words, their energy. That means, in that split second, you're handing over your control. The way to take that power back is simple, but not always easy. Pause before you react. That pause is small, sometimes no more than a breath, but it's everything. The same volume. It's the difference between saying something you regret and saying something that sets you free. It's the difference between escalating a problem and diffusing it before it even begins. Think about the last time you snapped back without thinking. Chances are it didn't solve anything. It may have even made things worse. Now imagine if in that moment you had paused, breathed, and chosen your next step instead of letting the situation choose it for you. That's where the strength is. Pausing doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're letting the other person win. It means you're taking ownership of yourself before you give them a piece of your mind. The person who controls their pause controls the room. They control the tone. They control the direction of what happens next. A pause gives your emotions time to settle, and it gives your brain the chance to catch up with your mouth. Without that pause, you're running on autopilot, and autopilot reactions usually come from ego, anger, or defensiveness. With a pause, you step into intention. You get to choose whether to respond with calmness, silence, humor, or firmness. One of the greatest advantages of pausing is clarity. In heated moments, emotions cloud judgment. You hear insults louder than truth. You see disrespect instead of perspective, and you assume the worst before considering the other person's reality. But when you pause, you clear the fog. Realize that maybe the rude cashier isn't targeting you. They're just exhausted. Maybe the harsh text from a friend wasn't an attack. It was a reflection of their own bad day. The pause gives you enough space to see the situation for what it is, not just for how it feels in the moment. Think of it like this. If someone throws a spark at you, you have two options. You can toss fuel on it by reacting instantly, or you can pause long enough to let it fizzle out. Most sparks die on their own if you don't feed them. That pause protects your peace. It keeps you from wasting energy on battles that don't matter. It preserves your dignity in moments when losing your temper would cost you more than you realize. Now, pausing doesn't always feel natural, especially when emotions are high. That's why it's a practice. You train it like a muscle. Start small. When someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of honking or shouting, take a breath. When someone interrupts you in a conversation, pause for a beat before you continue. Each time you do it, you're building the discipline to choose yourself instead of surrendering to the moment. Over time, that pause becomes your power. People will notice it. They'll see that you don't get rattled easily, that you're not quick to anger, that you carry yourself with calm authority. And here's the truth: people respect the one who stays composed more than the one who always reacts. The pause not only changes how you see others, it changes how others see you. So the next time life throws you a spark, remember this: you don't have to be the fire. Take a breath, pause, and step back into your own strength. Because in that space between what happened and what you choose to do, that's where your freedom lies. When someone comes at you with anger, disrespect, or criticism, the first thought that runs through your mind is usually, why are they doing this to me? You take it as a personal attack. Their words feel like daggers pointed straight at your character, and suddenly you're caught in the heat of the moment. But here's the shift that changes everything. Most of the time, it's not about you at all. People project their frustrations, insecurities, and stress onto whoever is standing closest to them. When you learn to detach the person from the problem, you stop carrying their baggage as if it belongs to you. Think about it. When a coworker snaps at you, is it really because you're the problem, or is it because they're under pressure, tired, or upset about something else? When a stranger is rude, is it really because you deserve that attitude, or because they're fighting their own battles behind the scenes? When you stop taking their storm personally, you see that the thunder is yours. This realization doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it frees you from making it your identity. Detaching the person from the problem doesn't mean ignoring what happened. It means you see the difference between the individual and the issue they're dealing with. Allows you to address the situation without attacking their character or letting your emotions hijack the moment. For example, instead of thinking, this person disrespects me, you can reframe it as, this person is struggling with how they're handling the situation. That small mental shift softens the emotional sting and gives you room to respond with clarity instead of defensiveness. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming intent. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instantly you label them as inconsiderate or selfish. But the truth is, you don't know their story. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. Maybe they're distracted by something heavy weighing on their mind. The point isn't to excuse reckless behavior. It's to protect yourself from unnecessary anger. By separating the person from the problem, grant yourself a healthier perspective. When you detach, you also make space for empathy. You start asking, what might they be going through? Instead of, why are they treating me this way? That shift alone changes your entire emotional landscape. Curiosity replaces judgment, and compassion replaces resentment. You begin to understand that most people's reactions are less about who you are and more about what they are experiencing. This perspective doesn't make their words or actions acceptable, but it keeps you from internalizing them. Another benefit of this practice is that it keeps conversations from escalating. If you treat every problem as a personal attack, you respond with equal force, and the cycle continues. But if you step back and see the problem as separate from the person, you can address the issue directly without damaging the relationship. For instance, telling someone, I feel disrespected when I'm interrupted, is different from saying, you're always rude. The first addresses the problem. The second attacks the person. One opens the door to resolution. The other builds a wall. This skill takes time to develop because our emotions are quick to fuse the two together. But every time you practice it, you build resilience. The next time someone lashes out, remind yourself, this isn't about me, it's about what they're carrying. That mantra alone can save you from hours of unnecessary frustration. Detaching the person from the problem doesn't just make you calmer, it makes you stronger. You stop reacting to every slight, every insult, every careless word. You start living with the kind of emotional intelligence that allows you to hold your peace in the middle of someone else's storm. And when you live that way, you'll find that nothing and no one has the power to bother you the same way again. Most people think setting boundaries means putting up walls or shutting people out, but that's not what true boundaries are about. A boundary is not a weapon you use to push someone away. It's a door that you control. It's a clear line that says, this is what I allow and this is what I don't. The problem is, a lot of us only set boundaries when we're angry, and by then, our emotions have already taken over. We shout, we slam doors, we say things we can't take back. And while the point of the boundary might be valid, the way it's delivered can damage trust, respect, or even relationships. The real strength is being able to set boundaries without anger. Boundaries delivered calmly are actually more powerful than ones delivered in frustration. Anger can make your message feel like an attack, but calm firmness makes it undeniable. Imagine someone constantly texting you at late hours when you're trying to rest. If you wait until you're exhausted and annoyed, you might snap at them. Stop blowing up my phone at night! But if you calmly say, I turn my phone off at 10, so I'll respond in the morning, you've drawn a line without hostility. The difference is night and day. One invites conflict, the other commands respect. What's important to understand is that boundaries are not about controlling other people. You can't make someone respect you, but you can decide what behavior you will and won't tolerate. You're not telling people who they should be. You're telling them who you will be in response. That's the power of boundaries. For example, if someone keeps raising their voice at you, you can say, "I'm happy to continue this conversation when it's respectful." If they keep yelling, you step away. You didn't get angry. You didn't match their energy. You simply showed that your peace isn't negotiable. The reason people often avoid boundaries is fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, fear of looking too harsh. But here's the truth: you teach people how to treat you by what you allow. If you say nothing, people assume it's fine. If you respond with anger, they focus on your reaction instead of the issue. But if you calmly, consistently reinforce your line, people learn where the limits are. Calm boundaries also make your relationships healthier. They prevent resentment from building up. How many times have you held your tongue, let things slide, and stayed quiet, only to explode later because the weight became too heavy? That explosion usually surprises the other person because they never knew you were struggling. Setting boundaries early and doing it without anger prevents that hidden buildup. It creates clarity. It gives others a chance to adjust before things spiral. Another thing to remember is that boundaries are about consistency, not just words. If you say, "I don't allow gossip," but still sit in conversations filled with gossip, your words lose meaning. But if you excuse yourself calmly when it starts, you've reinforced your line without a single ounce of anger. People may not like it at first, but over time they'll learn to respect it. The more you practice, the easier it gets. At first, you may feel nervous or even guilty, but guilt doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something new. Eventually, you'll realize that boundaries are not selfish, they're an act of self-respect. They're not about shutting people out, they're about letting the right people in while keeping your peace intact. So the next time you feel pushed, don't wait until your frustration explodes. Don't let anger carry the message for you. Speak with clarity, act with consistency, and stand firm with calmness. Because the strongest boundaries aren't shouted, they're lived. When someone does something that frustrates or confuses you, the easy response is judgment. You label them as careless, rude, lazy, or selfish. Judgment feels quick and satisfying in the moment because it gives your brain a conclusion. It puts them in a box and closes the case. But judgment also locks you into negativity. It shuts down your ability to see deeper, to understand what's really happening, and to grow from the situation. That's why choosing curiosity over judgment is such a powerful shift. Curiosity keeps your mind open while judgment keeps it closed. Think about a time when someone cut you off mid-sentence. Judgment says, "They don't respect me. They're arrogant." But curiosity asks, why? Why did they feel the need to jump in? Maybe they were excited. Maybe they misunderstood and thought you were finished. Maybe they grew up in an environment where interrupting was normal. When you choose curiosity, see possibilities beyond the negative story your mind immediately created. You might still set a boundary, but you do it from understanding instead of anger. Curiosity also protects your peace. Judgment fuels irritation because it assumes the worst. When you assume someone ignored your message on purpose, you get offended. When you assume they're just busy or distracted, you give yourself room to stay calm. That doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. It means you refuse to let assumptions poison your mood. Curiosity helps you look for information before you hand over your emotions. The truth is, everyone is carrying a story you don't see. The impatient cashier might be working a double shift. The coworker who seems lazy might be battling something at home. The friend who's distant might be dealing with their own pain. Judgment blinds you to those realities, but curiosity reminds you that people are layered. There's almost always more beneath the surface. This mindset shift doesn't only change how you see others, it changes how they see you. When people feel judged, they shut down or get defensive. But when they sense curiosity, they open up, they feel safe to share their side, and conversations become more honest and productive. For example, instead of telling a teammate, "You never care about deadlines," you could ask, "What's been making it hard to stay on track lately?" That question doesn't just avoid conflict, it creates connection. Another benefit of curiosity is that it makes you a better learner. Judgment assumes you already know the answer. They're just irresponsible. Curiosity admits, maybe I don't know the full picture yet. That humility opens the door to growth. It makes you better at problem solving, better at listening, and better at leading. The people who influence most are not the ones who judge quickly, but the ones who ask deeper questions. Of course, curiosity doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or pretending harmful behavior is acceptable. It simply means you gather more understanding before you decide how to respond. You can be curious about why someone acted the way they did and still hold them accountable. In fact, curiosity makes accountability more effective because it addresses the root of the issue instead of just the surface. Choosing curiosity over judgment takes practice. Your brain loves shortcuts, and judgment is the easiest one. That's why the next time you feel irritated, try pausing and asking yourself one question. What else could be going on here? That single question interrupts the cycle of assumption and opens a path to empathy. Over time, this shift changes everything. You'll find yourself less reactive, less angry, and more grounded. You'll handle conflict with wisdom instead of ego. And you'll start building relationships rooted in understanding, not suspicion. Judgment divides, but curiosity connects. Judgment closes doors, but curiosity opens them. And when you live with curiosity, you don't just see people differently, you see life differently. Silence is one of the most underrated forms of strength. In a world where everyone feels the need to respond instantly, to defend themselves, to win every argument, silence can feel uncomfortable. But silence is not weakness. It's not avoidance. Silence is control. It's the ability to choose restraint when your emotions are pushing you to react. Mastering the power of silence means you no longer allow other people's noise to dictate your peace. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Maybe it was a sarcastic remark, a passive-aggressive comment, or a direct insult. The natural reaction is to snap back, to prove a point, to match their energy. But when you respond with silence, you disrupt the entire pattern. You refuse to feed their fire. You take away the reaction they were hoping to get from you. And that alone gives you the upper hand, not because you won, but because you stayed in control of yourself. Silence also communicates more than words ever could. A calm pause in a heated conversation shows that you are not easily rattled. Walking away without arguing shows that you value your peace over proving a point. Even in negotiations or leadership, silence is powerful. When you stop talking, people lean in. They reveal more. They question themselves. Silence, used wisely, creates space for the truth to surface. Many people mistake silence for surrender, but it's the opposite. Silence doesn't mean you agree. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you are confident enough not to waste energy on battles that don't matter. Arguing with someone who refuses to listen is like shouting into the wind. It takes your energy but changes nothing. Silence protects you from that trap. Silence also gives you time. Time to think, time to process, time to decide what actually deserves your words. Once words leave your mouth, you can't take them back. But silence creates a buffer between impulse and action. That buffer is where wisdom grows. Instead of saying something you'll regret, silence allows you to respond later with clarity and composure. Another overlooked strength of silence is how it makes others reflect. When someone speaks harshly and you don't respond, they're left alone with their words. They have no distraction, no comeback to fight against. Many times, people regret what they said more quickly when silence meets them instead of defensiveness. Your quietness can be a mirror, forcing them to see their own behavior. This doesn't mean silence is always the answer. There are times to speak, to set boundaries, to stand up for yourself. But silence is a tool you can choose strategically, not out of fear, but out of strength. The difference lies in intention. If you are silent because you're scared, you're shrinking. If you are silent because you've chosen not to engage, you're rising above. Mastering silence is really about mastering yourself. It requires self-discipline to resist the urge to clap back. It requires confidence to let someone else have the last word without it shaking your worth. And it requires wisdom to know when silence heals and when words are needed. The balance is powerful. Speak when your words add value. Stay silent when they don't. Over time, silence becomes your shield. It protects your energy. It guards your dignity. It reminds you that not everything needs your attention. When you stop feeling the need to react to every comment, every insult, every provocation, you step into a higher level of control. And when people realize they can't pull you into drama, they stop trying. So the next time you're tempted to fight every battle, remember this: silence is not empty, it's full of power. Sometimes the most commanding thing you can say is nothing at all. Every day begins with a choice. Either you set the tone for your life, or you let the world set it for you. Most people wake up and immediately hand control over to distractions, scrolling through messages, checking social media, or diving straight into work. Without realizing it, they start the day already reacting instead of leading. That's why it's so important to anchor yourself daily. An anchor keeps a ship steady in rough waters, and the same is true for you. If you don't secure your mind and emotions at the start of the day, anything or anyone can push you off balance. Anchoring yourself daily doesn't mean building a complicated morning routine. It's about creating intentional moments that ground you, remind you of your values, and prepare you for whatever comes. Think of it as charging your inner battery before you go out into a world that's constantly trying to drain it. If you don't take time to center yourself, you'll find that small frustrations become big ones and little challenges feel overwhelming. For some people, anchoring looks like prayer or meditation, quiet moments of stillness that connect them to something bigger than themselves. For others, it's journaling, writing down thoughts, intentions, or even gratitude. Some prefer movement, stretching, walking, or working out as a way to wake up the body and focus the mind. The method doesn't matter as much as the intention you're telling yourself. Before I give my energy to the world, I'm giving it to me. Anchoring also creates consistency. Life is unpredictable, but when you have a grounding habit, you start each day with stability. Even if everything else feels chaotic, that one practice becomes your steady point. It might be 5 minutes of breathing, 10 minutes of reflection, or a short routine you never skip. The point is, you begin from a place of strength instead of scrambling to catch up. Another powerful part of anchoring yourself is choosing your mindset before the world chooses it for you. When you wake up and immediately consume negativity, bad news, gossip, endless scrolling, you're letting outside voices steer your emotions. But when you start with practices that align with peace, gratitude, or purpose, you're choosing your own direction. You're reminding yourself, I decide how I show up today. Anchoring yourself daily also makes you more resilient. Think about a storm hitting a ship. If the anchor is strong, the ship may sway, but it won't drift away. The same applies to your life. Challenges, conflicts, and stress will always come. But if you're anchored, you don't get carried off course by every problem. You handle difficulty